Moving forward from this point, you should have your 3 tail pieces tacked into place. So I got my center piece here, then my 2 sides. I have put a tack weld on the top and bottom of the outside, as well as 4 tack welds on the inside down the seam that you can't see. I would suggest doing the same on both of your seams. That way when we go to solid weld this, having multiple tack welds makes it so it doesn't get hot and warp out of alignment. So after you have all that done, another thing you need to do is just grind off your front seam tack weld smooth, so that you got a semi-smooth surface up here. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to weld on our tail gussets. So you should have received these pieces in the mail, but you should have 2 of these pieces that look like this, and then 4 of these pieces. We're only going to use 2 of these at this point. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to put those on. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be welding this piece on, but I have the passenger side piece down here. This one's the driver's side. It goes like so. So the passenger side is the opposite way. It goes on like this. So as you can see, I got my 90-degree magnets here. If you don't have 90-degree magnets, you can use your square, but this piece is just flush with the bottom side here at a 90 degrees. I'm going to throw a tack weld on each end, and then on the bottom side, on the underneath side of the seam. So after you do that, go ahead and repeat for the opposite edge, or the opposite side with the other gusset. So your tapered side should go towards the center. The left side edge will line up with this seam. The right side edge is going to line up right here at this point. So after you have your 2 centerpiece gussets welded on your tail, we're going to do the side pieces next. So as you can see here, this angle here isn't a 90 degrees, it's a little bit more obtuse, it's about a 100-degree angle. You need to have your long side of your angle towards the outside. So you're going to have, there's going to be 2 of these pieces that are left-hand side and 2 of these pieces that are right-hand side. So just make sure that you figure out which ones are. So this is my right-hand side over here, and this is my left-hand side. As you can see, this one wouldn't work. Actually, it would if you flip it over. So it doesn't matter, but just keep that in mind that one of these angles, this is not a 90-degree angle, as this is going to match up. So get this on here, put it at a 90, tack weld it 3 positions. Then underneath on the bottom seam here, and repeat the process for the other side. This is what you should have at this point. Your 2 side pieces of your tail gussets, your 2 center pieces of your tail gussets, and after you have that done, we'll move on to the next step. Don't solid weld anything, just tack weld everything at this point. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting 2 of these pieces, and what these are for is these go on our tail as to add some extra strength as well as dimension and look to the tail, so they're going to go right here. But to cut these out, what you're going to need is you're going to need to cut 1 piece of 2x3 rectangular tube. This is the thinner walled. This is 090 walled. The tube you used for your inner frame was 120 wall. So you should have some of this in your material pile. You're going to need 1 piece that's 19.5 inches long. So pause the video, go cut your piece of 2x3 by 090 wall at 19.5 inches. Once you got that done, come back and I'll go over how to make these 2 triangular pieces. So once you get that done, again, this is what we're going for as far as the final look goes. So to get 2 of these, basically you just draw a line from corner to corner on your piece, as I have drawn here. Also on the other side, make sure they're going the same direction. You don't want one going this way and then the other one Xing on the other side, so make sure they're parallel with each other. And then you just use your cutting wheel on your grinder and cut down the line, and it's going to chop this thing in half diagonally, and it's going to yield 2 of these pieces. So once you get those cut out, we'll go over how to weld those on. And after we cut this diagonally, we're going to need to make one more cut on this, which I will show you after you get your diagonal cuts done. So go ahead and get your slitter disc, cut these, and when you come back, we will move on to what is next. So your cutting of this should have yielded 2 pieces that look like this, opposite of each other. So we still have one more, or actually 2 more cuts per piece that we need to do. So for this part, you're just going to get your square and run it along your cut edge that you just cut, and then draw lines that are 90 degrees to your cut edge. So we're just going to cut little baby triangles. As you can see, I got 2 lines here, and there's also 2 on the opposite side as well. So just get your square along your cut edge and draw a line that intersects with the bottom outside corner. So just like I've got drawn here, just get your square along your cut edge, draw lines that go from about 1/2 inch down the edge and then that intersect with the bottom corner as shown here. You're going to do that on both sides for each of your 2 pieces. So it should be 4 cuts that just make these pieces so they are 90 degrees with your cut edge. So go ahead and do that, and then we will go ahead and weld these on the actual flatbed. Alright guys, so at this point you should have your 2 rectangular tube triangles cut out, 2 pieces that look like this. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be welding these on our tail. These pieces just add some extra strength and dimension, make this thing look good. So one thing to note is make sure you have the seam of the piece that's going to be on the inside. So my seam's here, this piece is going to fit here, so the seam's on the inside, so it won't be visible when we paint and powder coat this bed. So a couple things to note before we put this on. If you have any tack welds on this seam here, they need to be ground off. I've ground my 2 tack welds off just so they don't hang up on this piece when we weld this on. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put this on, and this is actually going to be a 3-way weld. We're going to run 1 bead and it's going to weld 3 pieces of metal together. So we're going to place this right at the edge of this seam where the outside tail piece, your center tail piece, and your rectangular triangle come together. We're going to run a bead the length of this seam, and it's going to weld all 3 of these pieces together. Another 3-way weld that's going to happen here is this tail gusset and this tail gusset are also going to be welded to this rectangular triangle in this seam down here. So we're going to basically place this right at the edge of the seam, as you can see right here. We're going to tack weld it in 4 positions: top corner, bottom corner. And then another thing to note before you solid weld this is you should have several tack welds on the back side of this seam, because as we weld down this, it's going to get really hot, and if you don't have it tack welded, it's going to warp and bend and get it out of line. So make sure you have several tack welds on the back side of this seam before you start. But I'm just going to place this here, tack weld it in my 4 positions. Also, if you got a tack weld down here and it's kind of hanging up on your triangular piece here, I just kind of knocked off the corner with my grinder so it fits in this here nicely. It should be tight against here. So any tack welds that are interfering, just knock off that corner with the grinder so it fits in there nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and tack weld. Just make sure it's nice and lined up. And then push it tight against your bed down here. Make sure it's lined up with your seam. So once you have it tack welded, I would also actually recommend tack welding in the center here too. That's just some more insurance to ensure everything stays aligned, doesn't get too hot and start to warp. So once you have this tack welded, go ahead and tack weld the other side as well. And then once you have both of these tack welded on, you can go ahead and solid weld all the way down here around the whole tube. And then after that, we're going to throw some stitch welds on our gussets. So I usually do about a 2-inch stitch weld here, one in the center, one down here, and then solid weld this whole thing. But that'll come later. So first, do the same thing with the other side, tack weld it 6 positions, and then we'll do a fast mo video of actually welding this up.